Welcome to Book Carnival, everyone. My name's Anne, and we're delighted today to have Michael Berns with us. He's written the Tinderbox Plot, and he has this wonderful display behind him. And he will be reading and talking to us today about what made him decide to write a book like this and how it came about. Michael, welcome to Book Carnival.
Thank you, Anne. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, they're
okay.
nodding.
All the heads are nodding, and I appreciate the opportunity. And it's nice to see a bunch of old friends and some new friends on the screen. I don't know how many of you have actually read the book. I'm going to assume maybe half of you have and half of you haven't. So for those that have read the book, in our discussion that we have, don't give the ending away, okay? Spoil it for the others. So what motivated me to write this book? I mean, you all know I'm really a diehard scientist, and it started out as a book, purely a fiction book that was planted in my brain back in 1979 on my last trip to the Soviet Union. And I was carrying in a suitcase full of Bibles and Israeli literature at the behest of some of my students who were really much into the issue of the Soviet repression of the Jews, not letting them emigrate to Israel. And the synagogues have been closed, so they really had a shortage of prayer books. So they said, you're going in for your third visit, you won't have a problem. Well, they emptied my suitcase at customs, and I ended up spending the next 6 hours being interrogated by the KGB as to why I was there, who I was going to see. And that planted the seed in my brain. And it's been there for quite a few years. But the novel really springs from that first encounter with the KGB. And actually, a couple of the characters on the Russian side of my book are patterned after them. And then later on, when I got home from my trip, I was interrogated by the CIA, who wanted to know everything that had happened to me. So some of my characters on the American side in the book are patterned after the people from the CIA that I met, though I did change all of their names except one. I hope he's passed away because I'm not very kind to him in the book. But that's what motivated me. That's kind of been cooking around in my head for 30, 40 years. And I finally decided I would write it. And I didn't know that I was really writing a nonfiction book. I mean, it started out as fiction, but a lot of the things in the book, what happened in the real world around us, caught up with the book. And so in many ways, the book could be classified as historical nonfiction or historical fiction or creative nonfiction. Anyway, in my mind, it's fiction. As you read it, if you're interested, you come to your own conclusions. Now, in the book, I've got essentially the Russians versus the Americans, much as we have today in our political sphere. And I also have a very fractionated, polarized American society, which we also have. And the book was written pre-Trump. This book was, I've been working on this book about 4 or 5 years. So what's in the book is before most of what's happened now. So I think that is kind of, I don't know if it's a validation of the book, but it certainly means things have caught up. Anne, you tell me when you want me to let ask questions. I'm going to read basically 2 short passages from the book, and then maybe that'd be a good point after that, kind of open it up for discussion. Is
Of
that
course.
okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first segment I'm going to read is on the American side. This scene takes place in the conference room of the director of the FBI. Her name is Celia Starks. She's a Black woman, African American woman who's in her 50s, and so she's probably the first African American woman to head the FBI. And I might add that on the American team, they are mostly powerful women. On the Russian team, it's mostly classical Russian guys. Okay, and that was intentional. Okay, so we start off. Unlike other agency heads, Starks was known as a hands-on boss who rubbed shoulders with rank and file field agents. Though her approach had ruffled a few feathers, the vast majority of agents appreciated their director's desire to run the FBI from the ground up rather from the top down. Linda is the main protagonist here. Linda and Sally. Sally is a friend of hers who was actually a professor of hers at Cornell. Okay, Linda and Sally stood when the director entered. He shook their hands, greeting them by name before introducing her senior agent, Stan Nelson, who followed a few feet behind. The director took a seat across the table from Linda and Sally. Director Starks turned to Linda. Thank you for the alert from the Russian phone calls and identification of Mr. Grushkov. I've been in contact with your supervisors at NSA and with Jack Light at Langley. Your efforts played a crucial role in exposing the threat. So I want your assessment. Give it to me unfiltered. It took about 10 minutes of back and forth, but Director Starks was quick to grasp the situation, while Agent Nelson took notes on his laptop. She asked Linda, what's your level of confidence that there's a nuclear device in the Wichita hangar? My gut says it's there. But feelings don't get convictions. Any direct evidence, intercepted calls where a bomb is mentioned, radiation detection, anything I can take to the Attorney General and the DNI. Linda replies, the infrared imaging, the communications with the Russian FSB headquarters in Cuba, the airplane in the Wichita hangar, and the appearance of a top FSB operative in the US, who I'm confident is in that Cessna in the Wichita hangar. The director gave a decisive nod. The FBI is the lead agency on this. I've cleared it with the DNI, CIA, Homeland Security, Defense, NASA, and NSA. Our job is to work as a team with input from each agency. I've also spoken with your superiors, and you are both on loan to the FBI. Any questions? No, ma'am, they replied in unison. Good. I'll be setting up a joint meeting ASAP with the directors of the CIA, NSA, DHS, and Sec Defense. But so we're clear, I'm urging the DNI and the National Security Advisor not to brief the president until we have definitive proof that there's a nuclear bomb in Kansas. Linda blurted, there's something else. Okay, let's have it, Stark said. Linda described the unprecedented onslaught of hate speech on social media and her belief that there was a connection between that and the calls between Havana and the sites in the US. Celia Stark said, the FBI has full authority to pursue individuals involved in the incitement of riots, sedition, or plotting a conspiracy against the US government. I'll put my best IT people at your disposal. You can work right here in our image acquisition facility. Our IAF has direct feeds from the same satellites as the CIA and NASA. But I need you to monitor the hangar. Contact me if anything changes. Okay, so that's the brief setting for you, the situation from the American side. Now I'm going to read a brief excerpt from the Russian side. Back in the Wichita hangar, Grishkov went to the kitchen table and emptied what was left of the Stolichnaya into 4 glasses. The glasses clinked and were drained. In unison, they shouted, "Nostrovia," and following Grishkov's lead, smashed the glasses against the blank wall. Gregory and Misha eyed each other with a hint of skepticism, while Sergei stared blankly at the wall as the glasses fragmented. Now to piss, and then I'm going to arm the bomb, said Grishkov. Bladder emptied. Grishkov gestured to Gregory and Misha to lift the metal plate from the black box. Gently, he said, glancing at his watch. The time was 1:50 p.m. When the plate was removed, he leaned over the open nuclear cradle and, being careful not to brush against the sphere containing the plutonium core, he inserted the 2 remaining cladded wires into the color-coded wire receptacles on the bomb's underside. The weapon was armed. Grishkov held his breath for fear that even a puff of errant exhale might set it off, even though this was impossible. 2 more steps, he said. Set the 6-digit activation code and then the detonation timer. Blotting his brow with his shirt sleeves, Grishkov backed away from the bomb, turning to Sergei and asked, "You have our flight plan back to Arizona?" "We'll fly VFR at 10,000 feet below commercial traffic. Distance of 880 miles. Should take about 3 to 4 hours at 245 miles per hour. Piece of cake, as the Americans would say." Grishkov was not so sure. He knew how close Linda was getting, and he would not underestimate her determination or that of her cohorts in the different American intelligence agencies. Working with Jack Light over 10 years ago, Grishkov understood the American apparatchik better than any other Russian agent. He suspected by now that the CIA, FBI, and SA had parlayed their resources and were closing in. Grishkov knew his Snow Leopard and Arctic Fox teams embedded in the US had succeeded in bringing social media to a frenzy. He'd seen reports of physical attacks on the offices of liberal news media, followed by another report of a Molotov cocktail tossed through a window of Fox News. He saw these as direct results of the social media blitzes of his 2 embedded teams and hoped they had caused the American security agencies to divert some resources to that threat as opposed to the Kansas plot. Okay, those are the 2 excerpts from 2 sides. I apologize for not being an actor and making it more authentic, but there you have it. And did you want to see questions, or how should we proceed from here?
Yes. Well, I'm going to start with a question, and I'm not very technical, but how far apart were these groups that were talking? They're talking about the same thing and the same concern and the same plane.
Well,
how far apart were they?
How far apart, physically or in time?
Physically.
Well, the Russian group was in Wichita, Kansas, in the hangar where the plane and the bomb are, and the American side that scene took place in the office of the director of the FBI in the Hoover building. So
Okay.
the American team in Washington, D.C., and the Russian team in Wichita, Kansas.
That makes me feel better because I had missed that and thinking they're too close together. Do you want me to open it up to everyone and you can talk to them that way?
Yeah, let me just mention that because we have more people than what we started, that there's a website that Cynthia set up for me for the book. And I think that's in the chat room. Is that where it is? Yes, it's in the chat room. So the book website has all the background information that I gathered in writing the book. So all the technical stuff, where it came from, and a little bit more in depth about each of the characters. So if you want to read more about what went behind writing the book, that's available.
Okay, let me open it to gallery view. You can see everyone and they can be joining you. So what you did a little bit about what brought this on. I want to know what happened when they emptied your suitcase and interrogated you for such a long time. One, did you ever get the Bibles back? Were you
No,
allowed to take them in?
no. I mean, they confiscated them. They took my passport, and I started to get really nervous. So after several hours, I said, look, I'm invited here to give lectures at Moscow University, but I think you need to put me on the next plane back to America. At which point they released me, gave me my passport back, let me go. And so I went on and gave my lectures. I know I was followed, and I know they threw women at me, and I mean, but I still managed to go and visit one Jewish family because I had kept the addresses in a little black book that I kept hidden in my shirt. So I did go visit one family just so I could say that I had visited one Refusenik family. But yeah, everything, they let me go. I gave my lectures. I went home, and I never was invited back again.
I would have been so nervous about that. I think it's amazing you were able to handle that and do what you came to do, at least part of it.
Well, I don't know. I was younger then. Maybe I had no fear.
Anyone that wants to speak up can ask questions, and I'm working on why this isn't opening completely. So, but it doesn't stop anyone from speaking up.
Where's Vicky with all her questions?
Well, Helena has raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
Just speak up, Helena.
Thank you, Anne. So my question to you, Michael, is: did your Russian colleagues, when you went there to give a lecture, knew what happened to you? Did they know what happened to you when you entered Russia?
No, they didn't know, and I didn't bring it up. Several years later, I had heard back from my close friend, Andrei Rubin, who was biophysics professor at Moscow State University. And eventually we connected years later, and he said, did you do something that you weren't supposed to when you were in Russia? I says, why? Why do you ask? He says, the government took away my travel privileges after you left. And that was their way of they didn't take it out on me. They took it out on the scientist that had invited me, which was kind of sad, but that's what happened.
And Vicky is here. When did you get the documents about the bombs falling off ships?
Well, that is an interesting question because I did a literature search and an internet search and found that back in the 1960s, this jet plane rolled off the deck of, I forgot what the aircraft carrier was. I think it was the Ticonderoga. Anyway, a jet rolled off the deck, off about, a certain distance away from Japan. It shouldn't have been there, by the way, because of the agreement with Japan and nuclear weapons. But the jet, sunk down to about 20,000 feet. but it was a real thing. And I didn't know much more about it other than that I cited the event in blue italics in the book, which gave a link to where I found out the information from. And unbeknownst to me, when Vicky, my sister, got her Kindle copy, appended to the Kindle copy was a document, I don't know, maybe 20 pages thick, on all of the incidents of lost and misplaced American atomic bombs since the 1960s. And it was a lot. And the event that I was using was in there as a real event. But I don't know why that ended up going to you. I put that document in the book website. So if you want to read about all the lost A-bombs, it's there to read. But I don't think people realize, the general public realizes, that there have been so many misplaced over the years. A lot of planes crashed and so forth. But that's the answer to that question.
As a civilian, that's very frightening to hear.
Yeah, well.
Now, one other person brought up the fact that didn't the CIA get involved somehow?
Well, the CIA got involved. I don't know how they knew. Actually, when I went for my first trip, I went 3 times in 69 and then 70, 77. And I think they knew that I had been there earlier. So after each of my trips, they would come in and debrief me. What did you see, and what was the status of, lasers in the Soviet Union and so forth. But when I came back after my 3rd trip, and I had this great story to relate to them, they were interested. But as a matter of fact, the CIA agent, whose name was Jack Light, which really was his name, said, because they like the first or second night when I was in the hotel, women would sit down at the table where I was eating and trying to engage me in something. And I said that to him, and he says, "Oh," he laughed, and he says, "Yeah, there was a professor, a physicist from Berkeley, who went there, and they did the same thing, except he went up to his room with the girl, and 2 days later they came down they showed him the pictures, and they wanted information, and he just laughed and says, 'I'll take a whole bunch of those.'" So I wasn't the first one that they tried those sorts of things with. But the CIA was always curious about what I saw, and did I make any close friends and things like that.
And for my benefit again, because I wasn't paying that much attention at the time, how was it to travel in Russia then if you weren't carrying Bibles, if you were just going there?
Well, the people were very friendly. The scientists, of course, were very friendly. Scientists, it doesn't matter what country you're in, scientists kind of all speak the same language of science, and you get friendly with them. But they were fine. The average person that I would meet, like in a restaurant, a chef or a waitress, they were just more curious. One woman said, "Can I meet you outside?" And on the next day, and she says, "I have a cousin who lives in San Diego. I'd like to send back some pictures. Would you take them back for me?" And she said, "I'll come to the park tomorrow, and if I have a newspaper under my left arm, let me pass. Don't even say hello. If it's under my right arm, it's okay, and I'll give you the pictures." There was definitely a difference between the official government people and everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. How many times in all were you in Russia?
I was there 3 times. The first time I was over there, I was spent a month at a cancer research institute in Kiev, of all places.
Oh dear.
In the Ukraine, yeah. And then the other 2 times I basically went to quite a few different cities. The thing about Russia the Soviet Union was, it was definitely very multicultural with all the different places, in terms of the ethnicity of each of the different, in Georgia, Georgia people like to drink their wine. I don't know if Helena would agree with that, but Georgians are pretty big into making their own wine. And they took me for a picnic up in the mountains where they slaughtered a goat and we roasted it on the fire. But really, I found the people to be very warm and welcoming, other than the bureaucrats, which were pretty stern.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And as a doctor, you were going over there for further research at
Well,
some point?
I'm not an MD doctor, I'm a PhD doctor, but
Right.
yes, I was going over there to kind of tell them what I was doing, and then to try to establish some collaborations and working relationships, basically. At that time, back in the 60s and early 70s, there was not a lot of exchange going on between the West. I mean, that was the Cold War, and it was between it was pretty much the Eastern Bloc countries that had most of the exchange with Soviet Union.
Vicki has some questions in the chat.
I need, let's see, some help with that.
It's okay.
Okay.
I have to say, Michael, after years in the military in telecommunications, the things in your book threw me almost as if either you were in my hip pocket or you attended the multitude of classes that I was required to attend to handle sensitive documents. The first thing that threw me was where you found those documents that were hyperlinked, because way back when, around the same time frame, early 70s, 80s, we would receive 3-ring binder that looked just like those documents, and some young lieutenant would come along and stamp them secret, top secret, or whatever, and then they would come to our facility and we would do stuff with them. And so that threw me when I saw those documents. I went, what is my brother into? And then how did you find the methods of the methods that you described on how the spies interacted with normal US citizens were very, very much like the ones that we had to deal with, and then I was thinking, just what were you really doing, when you came up with all the information on the book? Then my next question is are you going to have a follow-up with your leftover characters? Because you left a whole bunch of things hanging. In my Kindle, luckily it's a Kindle, I have like pages of notes and comments if it was a paper copy, I'd have written all over it, but luckily it was a Kindle. Are you going to connect some dots there? Are you start with the top secret document that you found?
Well, no, I didn't find them. You found them. Evidently,
great.
Evidently, somebody connected.
They're scary.
No, someone connected with the publisher. Put the blue hyperlink in. I didn't know those. I only knew the fact that where the bomb came from, because that was a true fact of something that happened. But I didn't really know that there was that many other lost bombs.
Well, that alone scared me, because I'm serious when I say that's what the book, we called it the book in capital letters, would look like before things were classified. With the holes punched and the staple, and it looked like, if you guys haven't seen it, you need to read it.
Yeah, it's in the book website. You can look it up.
So are you going to follow up on some of your missing links there?
I don't know. It's been I'm not sure. I mean,
You left us hanging on a couple of characters. You realize that, right?
well, if you want to send me your questions, I'll unhang you.
I've been looking for it and I can't find it. I'll have to.
Cynthia posted there are things online, apparently, right, Cynthia?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Okay. You must have gathered a tremendous amount of material that would probably do very well in a second book. So, but you're not thinking about that right now?
Well, writing a novel, as a scientist was a pretty major effort. And by the way, I had two very good freelance editors from New York. I don't see them here, though I invited them, but they really helped me translate my science writing into a style that was, more creative.
For the
Yeah.
average person to read?
Pardon me?
For the average person to read and understand.
Well, I mean, yeah, it wasn't so much that, it was just style of writing.
Okay.
Style of writing. How do you write a conversation between people? I've
Yeah.
never had to do that. It actually write it so that it seemed real to the person that was reading it.
Well, that's amazing because you did a very good job of it since you.
Well, then my editors helped me a lot.
Well, that's what they're there for. Now, the gentleman from Wichita hopes there will be another book that will blow up really big in his area. So,
Wichita?
uh-huh.
Well, who said that?
I can't tell you the
Oh, I
name
see.
right
He raised his hand.
now. Okay.
Okay. I don't want to blow up Wichita. Hi, Leslie. Yeah. Though I picked Wichita, no one asked me why I picked Wichita. I picked Wichita because it's kind of the geographical center of the U.S. So I wanted a city not too big, nice, semi-average city in terms of size, in the middle of America. Because if the Russians could get a bomb in to blow up Wichita, that sends a message in itself.
Mhm.
And my way of getting the bomb into the country, I think, was one of the more creative methods in the book, because the Russians, as those of you who read the book know, that the Russians hired a drug cartel to build a tunnel under the border wall so that they could smuggle the bomb in to the United States under the wall, which I thought was amusing at the time, because at the time Trump was president, and he was always making a big deal about the border wall, and so the Russians smuggle a bomb in, which I still think is. I hope the people from Homeland Security read the book so that they
Realize what could happen.
Well, I mean, you try to think about if you wanted to smuggle an atomic bomb in, how do you get it in? I mean,
Yeah.
I thought that was a brilliant thing.
I agree with you. Yes. Also scary because someone may get the idea. They bring everything else that way.
Right. Well, that was the time that the railroad track under the border by what's his name, the big drug guy that.
Oh, yes.
Who was it?
Oh, I can't. Chapo, was he the one? Or was there another one? I thought it was Chapo. Uh-huh.
Yeah, El Capo, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And someone else had a question, but it went away too quickly. Just speak up. You're all able to talk to him. If you have a question that you posted that hasn't been picked up on, they go away very quickly. So speak up and ask.
Michael, did you have any help with the airplane part of the construction? Because I thought it was very, as an old helicopter pilot, I thought it was rather interesting with the latches holding the roof on.
Well,
I had a real good chuckle over that one.
I have one of my first PhD students who was retired already, is a pilot. And so he read that section and helped me a little bit.
You've got friends in high places that are all over that have contributed then. That's really nice. There's a couple of questions down in chat. Let's see what I can bring up. I know you don't want to get too far into the plot so that you give anything away. We want people to read it, right?
Well, yeah. But if people have questions,
For me, one of the this aspect of influencing people by way of the internet and all that, which we know is going on right now, and which affected the 2016 election and so on and so forth. How people listen to this stuff and are absolutely convinced it must be true. That's bothersome.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. And, that was the purpose of, I didn't go into it at all today, but, there's 2 other Russian teams, 2 women and 2 men that were planted in the US. And their sole job was to create frenzy through social media using sophisticated software the Russians had developed. They did bot storms and they really, probably do what actually goes on,
Well, they've infiltrated Fox News.
Yeah.
So Mike, that's one of the plot lines that I was wondering if you were going to follow up with. If you don't have a hint, that's one group that you can start with your next book.
Is what?
The embedded people.
Right. Yeah, there's whole stories there for those too. But in the book, I do go into depth about building up their characters and who they were and where they grew up and why they ended up and Russia working for the Russians as part of the it's the FSB, which is what the KGB evolved into. Yeah.
Yeah, but in your book you say some got turned and some didn't, and so that's hint where you can continue on their story. Are they going to continue as spies?
Yeah.
Are they going to be turned into?
I'm more likely to continue with my 2 main protagonists, Khrushchev and Linda.
And Light.
Well, Jack Light. Well, yeah. Jack Light's light went out.
Mike, you mentioned sort of offhand that you did manage to visit one of the families when you were in Russia. How did you manage to elude the KGB and get there?
Well, I don't know that I did elude them. I mean, they're professionals at following people, and what can I say? I went one night and found the apartment and rang the doorbell, and they invited me in. It was a husband, a wife, and a son, and I spent maybe an hour and a half just chatting with them. I didn't have anything to bring them other than some blue jeans that I had packed, knowing that at that time Russians always wanted American blue jeans. So I had packed a whole bunch. The KGB didn't take those, but I just felt that I had to at least follow through. I didn't think, they already let me go. What were they going to do? My wife, Robbie, she didn't want me to go. She said, you're going to end up in a gulag.
Did you ever follow up with that family or hear anything?
No, I don't know whatever happened to them. They were they were trying to get to immigrate. They wanted to go to Israel. But back then I wish they would have kept more information. Like I kept the logbook and took notes, but as the years went by, that stuff sort of disappeared. I don't know where it went. And of course, in retrospect, I should have kept it all.
It's easier. It's easy to think that way.
Yeah.
Cynthia said that her mom also donated Levi's. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they were such a priority over there.
Levi's and Beatles records.
Which records?
Beatles.
Oh, yes. Well,
Yeah.
that was a worldwide phenomenon right there.
Yeah. And medication. When I visited my friend Leonid Rubin, I packed all my own, whatever I thought I would need, antibiotics, and this and that in case I got sick. He asked me for everything. He said, "Would you please give me all your medications? You're going back, you won't need them." And I did, of course, because they were very hard to get, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one was, I don't know if it was oxycodone. One of them was a narcotic, one of those things. And he said, "Oh, I'll take that." Gave him a whole bottle.
Vicki wrote, "How did you feel then versus now?" And I missed the last part of it. It goes away so quickly.
Well, the then versus now. I mean, I think you have the classic same situation. I mean, when I was there, the issues with the government and the bureaucrats, they just were not nice people. They were picked and selected probably by their personalities to do that. I mean, that was the time of, I'm not sure if it was Brezhnev or who was the head of Russia. It was very, bureaucratic, and but the people were generally very nice. I mean, I didn't meet any people, other faculty or the people working in the hotel, taxi cabs, and all that. They were just really very delightful, more curious than anything else. They just wanted me to tell them about America. And you have the same thing today. You've got most of the people in Russia. Of course, you hear stories that they support what Putin's doing, but I can tell you that there's probably a lot of people in Russia that don't support it. But so you have a similar differential between the government bureaucrats and everybody else. I think that probably seems to be true somewhat today as well. But yep. Oh, another thing that happened to me when I was there was that I got to meet the two Russians who got the Nobel Prize. There was 3 people got the Nobel Prize for inventing the laser. A guy named Basov, Prokhorov, and then Charlie Towns in the U.S. And they got the Nobel Prize. And I got to meet both Basov and Prokhorov. And it was just interesting. They each, of course, were rewarded for their Nobel Prize. They each had their own institute.
Oh.
And I got to visit Basov, and I says, "So do you have much to do with your colleague?" He says, "No, we don't talk to each other." I mean, so they both established their own little empires, but did not like each other for whatever reason.
So not a lot of collaboration on doing something.
Well, there must have been some collaboration in the beginning, but I think a lot of it was theoretical. I think theoretical meaning what they got the Nobel Prize for was theoretical aspects of a laser, because the first one was actually built by another person in the U.S. Who couldn't even say he built a laser because it was classified. And years later, he sued the government to get, and not only get his patent released, but he gets royalties to this day for every laser that's sold.
Oh, not bad.
A lot of interesting stories behind lasers. Did you know that, Helena, about
Yes, I do. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. There are a
Yeah.
lot of interesting ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been very interesting, Michael. I think you want to tell people that this book is going to be available. Do you have it to hold up? Mine's not going to show because the camera's on you.
Do you
have a
want them to
copy?
order? They order it through you, or should they order it through Amazon?
They can do either one. I'm carrying copies, but they can also order it through Amazon. And Cynthia has put a link to the Kindle edition. Very thankful, very helpful. So it's covered in all kinds of ways that people have access to this.
Yeah.
You've covered so much information today. Is there one particular thing you wanted to tell us before we bid adieu? You've got all these nice people from all over. I'm very impressed.
Well, I'm very pleased with the diversity of the people. We've had, the bottom says we've had 21 people. That's probably a good number.
It's a very good number.
You know, as a first-time author, it's terribly hard to get your book out there. There are so many new books that come out.
Yes.
And, you know, for a book really to be successful, you've got to get reviews. So anybody who cares to write a review can put it right on Amazon. But, you know, breaking in as a, you know, fictional writing is really hard to break in and make it. I did this project for fun. I mean, I just wanted to do it, and it'd be nice if it was successful. I think it would be a great movie if someone wanted to take this plot into a movie. And one thing I did with my publisher was I negotiated to have the movie rights, though, you know, it may go nowhere, but I think it would be a kind of a good plot line for a movie. And
I agree. Yeah.
I'm proud of the fact that I have very strong female characters in the book. I kind of fell in love with my characters in a way that you know, Linda was really, her first name was Lydia, but I had to change it because I knew a girl in one of my classes in college who was named Lydia Chester, and I figured, well, I wouldn't want to remind her of me, so I just changed it to Linda. But yeah, I mean, anybody that knows a science, a reviewer for the New York Times or you know, that's how you get your book around. And you know, I sent it to the LA Times and to the Orange County Register and asked them if they would review it, but haven't heard back. But I mean, you know, I did this for do it, and I might write another book. I actually thought of another plot, but totally different than this one.
Okay. Howard and Leslie are saying goodbye and thanking you for this. Somebody else asked, another question was whether there were certain parts that were harder to write than others. And you did mention the conversation was a challenge to start with.
Yeah, well, I had a hard time writing the sex scene.
Huh?
You know, how do you write a sex, how do you know, it had to come across as people really caring for each other, you know.
Yes.
I had never written that before, and my freelance editor helped me with that. You know, I would think, you know, writing really good conversations between people, you know, knowing when to write narrative versus when to write, you know, talking back, you know, and that was hard. I mean, I never, even though I took a lot of workshops, writing group workshops, I never did feel I understood what point of view is. You know, POV, point of view is what the writers call it. So when you write, you want to write in the point of view of the characters that you're talking about, and then not bounce back and forth in terms of point of view. I never really understood that. And it took a while. for me to be shown what that was all about.
Well,
I think-
it's interesting. Authors will pick different ways to write, either always writing in the first person or third person. And most of the time I can't appreciate that because all I'm doing is enjoying the book. I don't think of the technicalities.
Well, that was a big issue with me. I wrote a memoir which hasn't been published yet, but I've written in the first person, and my editors convinced me to write in the third person in the past tense, whatever you call it. Anyway, they said they would redo 2 chapters and I should read them and see if I liked the way they had done it, and I did. And so the book is actually written in the third person, not in the first person. Though I felt it was easier for me to write in the first person.
But that's why you have all this wonderful support from the publisher. And Cynthia being here today, it just adds to that. It shows how close a bond there is between author and publisher. And the title that she gave before, which is all encompassing when you're working with an author. I want to thank you for today's visit. It was wonderful. Enjoyed your conversation and everything. Everyone needs to buy the book. They can see me in a little square, but I know you've got a book there, don't you, Michael, to hold up?
Yeah.
Much bigger than I have. There you go. You know what happens? It blends into the one in the background, which is more impressive.
Yeah.
I want to thank you and thank everyone that came. You had a wonderful turnout, and I'm very happy we're able to hear your thoughts about this and your experiences.
And I want to thank everybody and have a family reunion here, which is nice.
It was a multi-country reunion. I'm so
Yeah.
impressed with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And everyone remember, it'll be on Book Carnival YouTube in a week or so. And if you've missed any part of it, you can find it there. And then, of course, Michael's book is out. So that's another good place to know where to go. I want to thank you so much for being here today, Michael.
Thank you, Anne, for having me, and thank everybody for coming.
And we all applaud. Yes, or wave. Thank you all. It was a great event. Again, I'm impressive with everyone that showed up. Great support for you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.